I'm with the Bay Action Committee to free Julian Assange and also United Front Committee for a Labour Party. Today's Julian Assange's birthday, and he's in prison today for defending justice, for defending truth. So, who is Julian Assange? I think most people around the world know, but some may not. And he's a journalist, a publisher of WikiLeaks. And what WikiLeaks did was WikiLeaks was able to get information about the real crimes going on around the world, including U.S. imperialism and what the United States was doing in Iraq. And when you talk about massacres and terrorism, who is the biggest terrorist in the world? It actually is the United States government. They're terrorizing and murdering people all over the world. And what Julian did through WikiLeaks is exposed was the massacre of journalists in Iraq for that supposed invasion to protect democracy in Iraq. Another one of the United States, imperialist adventures. So when that was published, what did the government do? Instead of saying we got to put those people who carried out those murders of journalists, instead of putting them on trial, they went after Julian Assange for speaking truth to power, for exposing the crimes of the United States. And this attack using the laws of the United States are dangerous to every journalist around the world. Every journalist is in danger. In other words, Julian Assange is not a citizen of the United States. He's not a resident of the United States, yet he's being prosecuted. Why? Why? Well, I think from the point of view of U.S. imperialism, there's one law and it's U.S. law. And that U.S. law is appropriate all over the world. That's what they're saying by the prosecution of Julian Assange. This is a threat to journalists throughout the world and in the United States. Journalists here as well are being attacked and beaten. Frank Sterling, who is with KPFA, he was attacked and beaten in Antioch for exposing the attacks by the police on the residents, the black community. So this rally that we're having today on Julian's birthday is not only for Julian Assange, it's for journalists all over the world. It's for getting truth to power and freeing journalists, stopping the attacks. We have the attack on Shireen, the murder by the by the Israeli government on a journalist. And what was she doing? She was reporting about the terrorism of the Israelis, who the United States supports, against the Palestinian people. So I'm a member of the Pacific Media Workers Group Guild, and our union has called for the freedom of Julian Assange, and also the San Francisco Labor Council has called for the freedom of Julian Assange. And we believe that the labor movement really has to take a stand to free Julian and to demand that there be no prosecution of journalists here and around the world. This is a matter of really fighting fascism, because that's what we're facing. We're facing a fascist movement in the United States. And I remember when Trump said that the journalists were scum. Well, there was another person that used to talk like that, Adolf Hitler. That's what he said. The journalists were scum. But the United States government is treating journalists like scum when they go after Julian Assange, when they are silent about the murder of Shireen in Palestine. And this is a growing fascist threat, and the media actually used the material from WikiLeaks, the Washington Post, the New York Times. They use that information. Are they being prosecuted? No. But Julian Assange is being prosecuted. And why is that? Well, they are carrying out the support of U.S. imperialism. They're carrying out support of the war in Ukraine. And they're censoring Facebook. They're censoring media to prevent people from actually knowing what is going on. So what we're talking about is tying together the fight and the freedom for Julian Assange with the fight for against imperialism, against imperialist war worldwide. And we're facing really a global war of imperialism that is a threat to people throughout the world. Julian stood up against that. Julian stood up and put his life in danger, and he's in prison. He's incarcerated in a high-security prison. The people that really belong in prison are the rulers of the United States, about the capitals who vote for war. I mean, the war in Iraq was a crime. The war on Libya was a crime. I mean, the United States is committing crimes all over the world. And what we're saying here today is end the crimes, free Julian Assange now on his birthday, and also put the real criminals, real war criminals on trial. That's what we are demanding now. The real war criminals have to be put on trial.
How are y'all doing today? My name is Dayton. I'm with the United Against War and Militarism. I think I specifically want to talk about Assange. I think it's important to understand, why is he actually being incarcerated? Why is all this stuff happening to him? You could say, oh, it's because there were laws that were broken. Well, that's not true at all. I think what's really is Julian Assange is being arrested. He's being incarcerated for going against U.S. imperialism. I think it really has to be put front and center. He was incarcerated for doing basic journalism. He was incarcerated for going against the tide, against really what the present media monopoly in the United States and across the world really is. It's a just giant monopoly really working to serve the international imperialist class. And so as we see is what is Julian Assange, what did all that happened? What he did was he leaked information. He didn't acquire the information himself. He just published information that someone else acquired. And just for that alone is why he's being attacked by the U.S. government. And specifically, you see the U.S. government's allies really working to assist that with his extradition being allowed by a UK court, and really setting a dangerous precedent that anyone, any person, any citizen of any country can just be plucked by the United States if they speak out against U.S. imperialism. I think it's really important to understand kind of what a travesty it is that the media establishment today has actually shown Julian Assange almost nothing in the form of support, even going so far as to misconstrue his work as if he's just some right-winger that was trying to subvert Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. It's ridiculous. Exposing corruption makes you a Republican. Really, that's what the media establishment's position on Julian Assange is that by exposing corruption on Democrats, it made him just as bad as Republicans. That's really the level of discourse we have in this country, particularly as we come out of a global pandemic, as we deal with rising inflation, and as we deal with a war raging in Ukraine. Another example of imperialist war. The United States and Russia are committed to fighting it out to the very last Ukrainian. And again, like the media is really lock, stock, and barrel just behind every camp, either totally putting forward the U.S. narrative or totally putting forward the Russian narrative. And I think journalists like Julian Assange are to be celebrated, are to be mimicked, are to be emulated, not incarcerated. They're to be defended. And we see this media establishment, I think we really have to see this media monopoly as a really key thing to actually overcome as we bring this movement together. How can we actually go against these propaganda as directly as possible and really get the truth out there, the basic truth about what's going on with all these endless fucking wars across the world today? What's actually going on with the U.S. involved in over 70 military conflicts in the world today, in over 70 different countries in the world today. Why is that just taken as normal? Why is it that after 20 years of the war on terror, it's just treated as normal? No one thinks this is important to report upon. And those that do, those that think that they can accurately document this stuff, they're the ones that are actually going to be penalized, actually going to go to prison for that. And so, yeah, I think that's all I can really say. I think we need to free Assange. We need to condemn U.S. imperialism, and all power to the people.
Thank you. And this war to defend, there's a war on, and it's a class war really, against working people, poor people around the world. That's what we're really talking about. Who does this government represent? They represent the billionaires. Whether it's Trump or Biden, they're all together in attacking working people, attacking poor people, and attacking Julian Assange. We remember that Trump actually said he liked WikiLeaks. In fact, he encouraged more WikiLeaks released. Did he release Julian Assange? He didn't release Julian Assange, and Biden and his administration have also continued to demand the extradition of Julian Assange. And we're saying again, free Julian Assange! 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 So our next speaker was a retired member of the Journalists Union, Pacific Media Workers Guild, and also is on the executive board of the Peralta Federation of Teachers. Welcome, John Holmes.
I'm speaking here as a longtime union activist who has spoken up for Assange many times And now we are here all over again as the British government is finally about to send him off to American prisons for revealing the truth about America and Britain's dirty dealings overseas. Now that the Hillary, Obama, Trump, Biden campaign to extradite him into American prisons is nakedly about preventing public revelation of the crimes of U.S. imperialism, the same liberal news media organizations who towed the line for the worthless, false, slanderous, sexualist accusations against Julian Assange, seeing that their asses could be on the line next, are now willing to speak out for him a little bit. They'll editorialize, on the back page of, maybe this is a bad thing, as they are afraid that their necks could be on the line. But not very hard, as right now they are in lockstep with the Biden administration and Boris Johnson in the UK in beating the drums for war against Russia. Which WikiLeaks revelations about the crimes of U.S. and British imperialism would be in the way of. I want to say this is not a large rally. No one except really Code Pink and is about the only left organization we've got here besides you. Labor Fest. Okay, but we don't have, in terms of the organized left, we don't have a presence. But what's even more absent is the labor movement. I think it is tragic that the American labor movement has not taken up the cause of freeing Assange. I'm a former printer who was an activist for decades in the Bay Area Typographic Union, which merged with the newspaper guild to form the Pacific Media Workers Union, and as a retired member was involved in the fight, together with Steve Zeltzer, the fight to get my union to endorse his defense case, which they did on paper. Which we finally accomplished last year, but which our union leaders, our local union leaders, chickened out from trying to get the newspaper guild to come out in its defense nationwide. The same thing, the San Francisco Labor Council has passed a resolution in defense of Assange, but have they done anything about it? Nothing. Nowadays, I teach history at Merritt College, proud home of the Black Panther Party, or at least I did until the huge wave of cutbacks that started even before the coronavirus catastrophe. And for 3 years now, I've been a representative on the Executive Council for Adjunct Instructors for the Peralta Federation of Teachers, AFT Local 1603. The AFT is another union that hasn't wanted to touch the case of Julian Assange with a 10-foot pole. In both unions, and in every American union that's refused to step out in his defense, the excuse was always the accusations from years ago of alleged sexual misconduct against Julian Assange. Accusations that were dropped because there was simply no case for them at this point, something like 5 years ago in the Swedish courts, even though they'd been dismissed so many years ago. The old lies against Assange spread by U.S., UK, and Swedish government agents still have wings, even though among media workers who ought to know better out of basic professional responsibility. If we want to have a serious defense campaign for Julian, the lies about him have to be knocked down. A legalistic free speech defense is not enough. We have to take on all the lies and slanders about Julian Assange front and center if we want to get real support for the fight to free him. For more than a decade now, the true facts about the frame-up of Assange have been widely available for anyone who wants to see them. I don't have time to go over just how crass was the frame-up. Anyone who wants details, check in with me later. Now, we've already heard about the state of his case and his vicious mistreatment in the ugly Belmarsh prison in the UK, which is as bad as any of America's prisons, if not worse. The last thing I want to say here is that any serious effort to protest against the misdeeds of the U.S. and UK governments here and abroad, any fight against the U.S. war drive against Russia first and China next, any fight to liberate immigrants from the hideous U.S. government concentration camps that Biden maintains, just like Trump, any defense of black people against police violence, any fight against the class cuts and school closures ravaging education in California and nationwide, Indeed, any mobilization of working people against the steadily increasing impoverishment we are being subjected to is unlikely to get far without the backing of the only organizations working people have to defend themselves against the crimes of our corrupt, imperialist, white racist, male chauvinist, and generally just vicious ruling class here in America, namely the labor unions. Time for a new union leadership fighting for socialism.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Papermaster with Code Pink. Welcome, Cynthia.
Code Pink has been a very long-standing supporter for freedom for Julian Assange because we are so grateful to Julian Assange for showing us the truth of what was going on in terms of torture, in terms of collateral murder. We're so grateful to him. He deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Julian Assange is a hero. He is a publisher and an editor and a journalist who took the risk, the courage to share the truth with us. So he's being punished, severely punished, without actually having been convicted of any crime. This goes against every legal principle in both England and the United States. You don't get punished before you're convicted. That's an established legal principle, and yet he is being punished, persecuted, tortured by the United States government. President Obama declined to prosecute Julian Assange because he knew he'd have to go after the New York Times and other media outlets who published the same information that WikiLeaks published. President Trump reversed that and started going after Assange again. Now we have a Democratic president, a Democratic Congress. Why? Why is Biden and his Department of Justice continuing this prosecution? They haven't got a case. There's absolutely no espionage case that they could prove. It's legally fallacious. Who's writing this legal opinion? It doesn't make any sense. There's no espionage charge. He's not even a United States citizen. How can he be charged with the United States Espionage Act? How? It doesn't make sense. How could he be charged with computer hacking when the main FBI witness in that case has admitted perjury? He's admitted lying to the FBI in exchange for some legal favors. They have not got a case. It doesn't make any sense. Why is Biden continuing this? We have to put every single bit of pressure that we can muster to force the Biden administration to drop this case. It's completely insane that they would continue this. So happy birthday to Julian Assange. Our great and deep gratitude to you for being a truth teller. We hope you're set free, and we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker has been fighting U.S. imperialism in Puerto Rico and the fight for independence of the people of Puerto Rico. So welcome Ricardo Ortiz with the United Public Workers for Action.
Why the Justice Department has indicted Julian Assange? Why a Democratic Party administration and President Biden has indicted Julian Assange? Well, I tell you why. Because the Democratic Party is a capitalist party. It's the oldest capitalist party in the world. So the Democratic Party has a history from in the 19th century supporting slavery to invading the Dominican Republic in 1916, Haiti in 1915, Mexico in 1917, the Vietnam War, the imperialist war of World War II. Lyndon Johnson in '65 invaded the Dominican Republic. I mean, the list goes on. So we cannot expect that a party of the ruling class would be a good executor of justice. You know, it is like if you would be thinking that a pack of wolves will be taking care of sheep. No, we have to understand that the Democratic Party, as well as the Republicans, is a sworn enemy of the working class. That is a fact. I mean, have you forgot? I see people that are older than me. Have you forgotten 1968 in front of the Democratic Party in Chicago? What happened? The U.S. the Lyndon Johnson administration and the crooked Mayor Daley start beating up people right there in front of the Democratic convention. That happened in '68. A lot of you were alive at that time. A lot of you were protesting against the Vietnam War. So, and you remember the Chicago 7 that were indicted, under the Democratic administration of Lyndon Johnson? I mean, a lot of espionage laws, supposedly anti-espionage laws and repressive laws, have been signed into law by the Democrats. 1968, the Omnibus Crime Bill that gave federal agencies more resources and electronic powers to survey and blacklist and indict activists under Lyndon Johnson. Actually, the Attorney General at that time was Ramsey Clark, that became a darling of the liberals, later. But that is history. That is a fact. And we got to understand that. So therefore, what we have here at stake is how we fight this. The only way that we can fight effectively, so people like Assange, people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, the former Puerto Rican political prisoners, Leonard Peltier, and other political prisoners don't get these injustices by the capitalist government of the United States, is to build a revolutionary workers' party. Because the problem right here is not just the Republicans and the Democrats. They all the time sell us down the river. Learn from history. Face the music. Capitalism is absolutely the problem. It's an economic and political system that oppresses us in every aspect of our lives. Reproductive lives. Right here in the city, poor people can barely make it. And the rich fat cats are making money on our backs. They are closing schools, in Democratic Party run cities. Oakland right there, one of the supposedly bastions of progressivism in the United States. They are shutting down schools. The Fisher family wants to build a crazy stadium that will push workers out of that neighborhood. So open your eyes and stop denying reality. Every time that you go and vote for the Democrats, it's another deception. It's another frustration. So let's face it. And I want to talk about other supposedly so-called socialists. Number one, the darling Bernie Sanders. Does he represent the workers? No. That man that supposedly is a socialist, he supported the bombing of Yugoslavia in the 90s. He voted for the 51-day siege of Gaza, oppressing the Palestinian people. Bernie Sanders, look at you in your phones if you don't believe me. Google it. He voted for the budget of the super fighter bomber F-35. Actually, he ridiculously went so far that he advocated bringing F-35s for the Vermont Air National Guard. Read that. Don't get out of your denial. That's Bernie Sanders for you. So he's not a socialist. He doesn't represent the working class. He's another warmonger, a hypocrite. And let's talk about another so-called progressive and hero of the working class. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yes, she said that she supports the U.S. war against Venezuela. Publicly, she said it. She said that she submits to the leadership of the Democratic Party in American foreign policy. So what is that? That is backing up imperialism. She voted for this budget. I mean, she is a capitalist politician, a fake socialist, just like the social democrats around the world. We are facing a terrible economic crisis. Even the former base San Francisco Bank of America economist recently said that we are going to face rough times. The capitalists themselves, the ones that run all these financial institutions, they are openly saying that we are going to face harsh economic times. So who is going to pay for this crisis? We got to ask ourselves. Obviously, they are not. They are going to keep taking from us, raising taxes against us, get us involved in the imperialist wars. Don't you remember what another hero of liberalism did a few years ago? Obama. He gave money to the banking institutions. Or we have forgotten that. He did. And supposedly he was another so-called savior of the working class. What did he do? He supported the coup against Manuel Zelaya, the president of Honduras. That's what he did. It was a CIA-backed coup. And the Obama administration and his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, supported it right there in front of the whole world. He was right in line with the European imperialists bombing Libya. He wanted to go to Syria and send special forces and CIA groups into Syria. So that's the Democrats. So how much are we going to take to finally realize, who the real enemies of the people? I say both of the capitalist parties. Actually, I say this. There's one party. It's the capitalist class and has two wings. The Republicans, the conservative wing, and the Democrats, the liberal wing. Right now, comrades and friends, we got to mobilize. We got to be on the streets because this government, the Biden administration, Biden, that has been one of the co-authors of the legislations where this government deports people. The 1996 Immigration Reform Act, who signed it? Who signed it into law? It was the Clinton administration. What about the Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996? It was the Clinton administration. And right now, they're sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine to arm and equip their puppet government of Zelensky. And I gotta tell you this, if you don't know, that corrupt buffoon clown has appeared in the Panama Papers. He has money going overseas. He is in the pockets of the United States. And that doesn't mean that we support, on one hand, the, Putin crap regime. We don't, because it's a capitalist government. But we certainly understand that the enemy is at home. The enemy is at home. The main enemy is at home. And we believe in the working class. And we call to the workers of the world to overthrow these crazy governments, make a revolution, build independent revolutionary socialist workers' parties. That's the solution toward a war without frontiers, not a war. Free Julian Assange.
The square that we're in, this plaza, is called the Harry Bridges Plaza. Who was Harry Bridges? Harry Bridges was an Australian immigrant, a sailor who came to San Francisco in the 30s, and he became a longshoreman. And he organized with the longshoremen in San Francisco against the Blue Book. They used to line up on the docks here to get jobs, and bosses would pick and choose who they wanted. So they wanted a union hiring hall. And they went on strike in 1934, the longshoremen. And actually, a couple of blocks from here, 2 longshoremen were killed in 1934, July 5th, 1934, on Spear Street. So this union, the ILWU, had a strike, and they appealed to the Labor Council in San Francisco, and they voted in 1934 for a general strike. And that general strike actually was successful, and hundreds of thousands of workers joined unions around the Bay Area as a result of that general strike. And Harry Bridges also, when the ILWU was attacked. In fact, during that strike, the left organizations, communist and left organizations, were attacked by the police. Their offices were destroyed by the police. They had to go into hiding. And this history is important to understand, because what we're facing now in the United States is mass repression. Let's be very clear. The Republicans are likely to take over Congress. The Republicans are probably likely to take over the presidency. And they will implement what they want to do, which is a dictatorship. Not that the Democrats will save us from the Republicans, but they have an agenda to crush dissent, to totally destroy working class rights. It's not just women's rights. They're going to make it very difficult for unions to survive. They're going to make it difficult for all working people to survive. So we need a united front of all working people against repression, for Julian Assange, against fascism, and against privatization of public education and public services. We need to unite the entire population. We cannot be asleep. There are many people in this country on the left who think that we are not facing fascism. They believe in American exceptionalism. They don't believe there'll be fascism in the United States. Well, the developments that are taking place now in this country show that that is not the case, that there's a danger of fascism in the United States. The Nazis and right-wingers have a free day to massacre, and if they get elected, they'll have a free day to carry out massacres maybe every day. So our next speaker is Richard Stone, a delegate on the San Francisco Labor Council, representing the American Postal Workers Union, and he was the person who introduced a resolution at the San Francisco Labor Council to free Julian Assange.
My name is Rich. As Steve said, I'm an American Postal Workers Union delegate to the San Francisco Labor Council, and but also it's noteworthy to say that at the time when Steve actually formulated the resolution, it is when he was working at KPFA, when he was a member of the local station board, and even though the Pacifica Foundation outright passed it, KPFA failed to do it. So the next step that actually was in order was to actually bring it before the Labor Council, and to this day there has been no other Labor Council organization in the planet, even in Australia, as far as I know, that has actually passed it. So, in commemoration of his birthday, even though it was 3 years ago, I'm going to read the text of it. So, and like I said, this was passed on February 4th, 2019. Resolution in support of the defense of whistleblower and journalist Julian Assange. Whereas Julian Assange has helped expose the role of the U.S. and other governments' war crimes and violations of international law, and whereas Assange and WikiLeaks have helped expose the Panama Papers and the Podesta emails, which have shown the collusion between government officials, politicians, and corrupt billionaires and corporate owners, and whereas the U.S. government, along with the U.K. government, are seeking to push Julian Assange out of the London Ecuadorian consulate, and for his arrest by the May U.K. government and his deportation to the United States for criminal prosecution, and whereas this is a systematic effort by the U.S. government to harass, repress, and jail reporters and whistleblowers who expose corruption and criminal activities by government officials, and whereas U.S. politicians have called for the murder and torture of Julian Assange to silence him, and whereas the Australian Media Arts and Entertainment Media Alliance Union trained Julian Assange an honorary member for life, waived his fees, and called for defense of the rights. Whereas the Pacifica Radio Network Daniel Ellsberg, Oliver Stone, and others have called for his defense and freedom. Therefore, be it resolved that the San Francisco Labor Council defend the rights of journalists and whistleblowers and opposes prosecution which could affect all whistleblowers in the U.S. And be it finally resolved, the San Francisco Labor Council urges our representatives to oppose the criminal prosecution of Julian Assange for whistleblowing activities and will forward a concurrence of affiliated bodies. So, and like I said, that was 3 years ago, and in light of a lot of the media's censorship, which people should consider daunting, such as when they shut down RT America, a lot of people may have thought that was that I speak to aren't actually aware of the fact that some of the collateral damage of which any free speech I consider is is outrageous, but specifically there are a lot of supporters of Julian Assange that have spoke for his plight throughout the years. People such as Chris Hedges, Abby Martin, and Lee Camp, and all these people that I mentioned. Not only did they did they lose their shows at RT America, but all their videos have been banned by YouTube. So, this is something that actually, points in the direction of the media censorship that we've been trying to fight by fighting to get Julian Assange freed all along, but it's already happening. So I. Amongst other things, you must let people like Nancy Pelosi know that wasn't just a piece of paper that arrived on her desk. We must let her know, and all other government officials that are going to be directly concerned with this to hear our voices and to fight the extradition, from Julian, from Belmarsh prison. So happy birthday, Julian, and free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
Orion and Gigi, who are going to do some music for Julian Assange. Welcome, Orion and Gigi.
It's a beautiful song, and I'm going to run and get the lyrics and join her.
Obama was in Hawaii. This guy McKenna, who is, you might have heard of him. He's played in the Bay Area a lot. Anyway, he was up on the stage with his people playing, and all of a sudden he started singing his song. It's really good, and it scared the Obama and all his people, so they let him sing for 40 minutes, and they didn't want it to be on the news or anything. So anyway, this is his song. Come here and
Gather round the stage. The time has come for us to voice our rage. To those who have locked us in a cage and stole from us the value of our wage. Everybody occupy. We'll occupy the streets. We'll occupy the courts. We'll occupy the offices of you till you do the bidding of the many, not the few.
You enforce your monopolies with guns while sacrificing our daughters and sons. But some things belong to everyone. Your thievery has left the people none.
Chorus, everybody. We'll occupy the streets. We'll occupy the courts. We'll occupy the offices of you till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. So take heed of our
notice to redress.
We have little to lose.
We have little to lose. We must confess. Your empty
words have left us unimpressed.
A growing number join us in protest.
Free Julian, jail Bush.
We'll occupy the
streets. We'll occupy the courts.
We'll
occupy the offices of you till you do the bidding of the many, not the few. We are the many, you are the few. So our slogan is free, always true, right? Always true. He's never been proven wrong. Unlike the New York Times and CNN, they say all the lies and then they say, oh, well, we made a mistake. Julian said the truth, and that was it. That was it, and that's what we support. Free Julian Assange, happy birthday.
Yes.
Well, there's another political prisoner, there's another journalist who's in jail, and that's Mumia Abu-Jamal. And Christina is going to say a few words about that struggle, because it's not just about Julian, it's about all journalists. And Mumia Abu-Jamal has been in prison really for speaking out about the racist system and the murders that this system is conducting. Welcome, Christina.
First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very happy to be here, because I know that in my heart, I've been looking to where was something being done for the freedom of Julian Assange, because I knew his freedom was my freedom. I knew and I know that if we don't do something about it, we are opening even a bigger space for fascism to consolidate itself. And I'm so happy that we are all here, seniors. You know, we always talk about the young, but I'm so happy that we continue this struggle. That no matter how old we are here to bring that knowledge that we have, the experience that we have, to share with the young, with the old, with everyone. And that we are here for a reason. We keep being here for a reason. To speak that truth. To be able to put that seed in the heart of everyone around us. Because we have lived it. We have been fighting for justice for so long. I am very happy with everybody's speech today, because we are denouncing that the left has not done what they are supposed to be doing, that they have settled for becoming famous or getting their name known or being recognized here and there, instead of being moved by love to organize the people to find freedom, justice, and equality for one in our life, to get rid of a system that is destroying all of us, and that the people don't know about it, but we know, and we should be able to share that to everyone. This is why I'm so happy to be here. And you know, you are my comrades, and I am your comrades. No matter how many different we have, it's time to unite. It's time to unite. It's time to all these people to unite and come with that truth and form some sort of organization, political party or assembly or whatever that is able to tell the people what's going on and organize all of us to stop the madness. Or our children will have a very dark future. Today, also, there's going to be a march for Mumia. There's going to be a demonstration or a rally between 3 and 6 o'clock at the Dolores Park. And then they're going to march through the mission and go to the Black and Brown Social Club. Mumia was, or is, a journalist. We all know that. And he spoke the truth. Just like Assange. And because of that, they frame him. They frame him like they frame Assange. And he been how many years? 40-something years in jail, right? With no freedom. Because he was a journalist. And I remember not many people talk about him before. Now more people. It was just like we are today. The people who talk about Mumia. What we had to learn from these journalists, brothers and sisters, is that we're fighting for their freedom, but that we are willing to do everything possible to get their freedom just like they did it in order to give us our freedom. Those two men have sacrificed their life, their whole life, for your freedom and my freedom. So we must be able to do the same thing through these marches and everything else, but we must organize and we must overthrow this system that is not going to allow for the freedom of any political prisoner, that is not going to allow for women to have the right to the health care, that is not going to allow for political prisoners to be free, that is not going to allow for our children to have free education, that is not going to allow for our children to be able to have housing, that is not going to allow for us to have a decent paying job. So it's a system that doesn't work for us. It's a system that we must overthrow, and we must build socialism, because that is the only answer to the working people. That is the only answer, otherwise they keep on killing us, like they're killing black and brown people all over the street, like the police is there to terrorize our communities. So with that I say happy birthday to Julian Assange. And I said to him, I love you, man. I love you for what you have done. I love you for telling us the truth. I love you for risking your life. And I am making a commitment to myself and to you and to everybody that we will continue this struggle to bring the truth, that we will continue fighting for his freedom and for the freedom of Mumia and for the freedom of all those political prisoners that has risked their life for your freedom and my freedom. Thank you so much. Power to the people.
Now, I want to briefly say what happened in our union. I'm with the News Guild, Communication Workers of America. And Mumia Abu-Jamal is a member of NABIT. He was a reporter in Philadelphia at a station. So he was a member of our union, the CWA. And when we passed a resolution from our local to go to the National News Guild Convention, they said, no, we can't mention Julian Assange. So they passed what they called a compromise resolution that mentioned Khashoggi, who was murdered, but they didn't mention Julian Assange. So why is that? Why would my union that represents journalists not defend Julian Assange, call for his freedom? Well, one of the reasons is that the AFL-CIO is part of the U.S. government. It's part of the U.S. government because they take $75 million a year for their so-called Solidarity Center, which is in Colombia, which is in Mexico, which is in Ukraine, around the world, supporting privatization. Why is the government giving $75 million a year to the AFL-CIO if it's not doing the bidding of the multinationals, of the billionaires? We have to demand that the unions stop taking money from the government. We need real solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters around the world, not supporting privatization, not supporting the billionaires around the world. And I learned yesterday in Mexico that in Baja, where the farm workers who are fighting Driscoll, there's 70,000, 80,000 farm workers and their families. The AFL-CIO is down there, but they're not fighting Driscolls. They're not really supporting the workers who are fighting slave labor. They're using child labor right on the border by Driscoll's, this company. The AFL-CIO Solidarity Center doesn't want to talk about these multinationals because they're paid off by the U.S. government. That has to end. We have to say the unions in this country need to get the hell out of the government and stop taking government money and they have to fighting, and they have to speak up for Julian Assange. The fight for Julian Assange is a fight for all journalists. Mumia Abu-Jamal, journalists who are being attacked and repressed around this country, including in San Francisco where journalists have been attacked, including in Oakland, including in Antioch, even in Marin City where a journalist was attacked. Jeremy Porci, who was covering the homeless in Marin County, and he was attacked by the police. And even though it's illegal in California, under the SHIELD Act for police to attack journalists, they raid their offices. Brian Carmody in San Francisco, his office was raided. In Marin County, they arrested Jeremy Porci. Was there any prosecution? Did the district attorney prosecute these police, these criminals? And even judges signed a subpoena knowing that he was a journalist. What we're talking about is corruption. We're talking about systemic corruption. The capitalists control the courts. The capitalists control the judges. And who are they prosecuting? Not the billionaires who are stealing from the people in this country. They're prosecuting the journalists who tell the truth about that. That's who they're prosecuting. So that's why we're saying free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange.
We are all united in this. And Julian Assange was very careful to always be about unity. He never identified as a capitalist or a socialist or a libertarian. He did say he was generally a libertarian, but he didn't think you could get there without force. So there's that. Let me ask a question. Anybody here been arrested? Solitary confinement. No? No solitary. Okay, solitary. I was in solitary confinement in state prison for 5 days. I paid $800 fine and $1,000 cash to a connected lawyer who I'm sure he didn't pay taxes to get me off, but I left the state of Pennsylvania as soon as I could, but it changed my life forever. I don't normally tell this story, but when I got back to California to reconnect with my friends after having this experience, I said it was like walking through the looking glass. You don't know what it feels until they put the orange jumpsuit on you and they put you in shackles to make a phone call, which they were required by law to give you within 30 minutes or an hour of your arrest. But when they read me my rights and they said, do you understand them? I said, yes, and I'd like to talk to my attorney before I answer any more of your questions. They spat in my face and looked me straight in the eye and said, we don't give a damn about your rights. That's reality in America, people. And if you haven't been inside, you don't know. And I'm telling you, when I got out and I went into the yellow pages looking for an attorney because the prisoners in the solitary confinement, I think they call it the SHU now. You're solitary for, they give you out for 30 minutes or something. I didn't want to go out, but they forced me to go out to take a shower after about 4 days. And then they're taunting me, talking about raping me and all this kind of stuff. I didn't need that, It was bad enough, but I'll tell you, when they finally had to take me for an arraignment, I'm alone in this guard with this. They stole $100 out of my wallet. I hope this isn't too much detail, but I want you to understand how evil this fucked up system is. And it's just this 5 days for me. Julian has been in confinement for 12 fucking years. Can you imagine? And Chelsea Manning, The White Room. Listen to Graham Nash's song. What is it like? I can't imagine. But Julian is going crazy. He's hurting real bad. And he said when he was being hauled off in the van, he raised his fist and he said, I've done my part. Now it's up to you. It's up to all of us. We have to carry the torch from here because Julian can't do it anymore. When are we going to get fucking angry and tear this shit down? I'm ready. But I also know that, they outnumber us. But I'll tell you one thing, Julian knew the smart way to get things done. Look around and see what they want to cover up. That's your signal, because transparency is the method. Justice is the goal. That he always said. And unity. He said the oppressors are united. We must be more united. So I'm not going to divide on race, religion, politics, parties. It's all bullshit, because you can elect the best people, but I know people, they get kind of weird after about 6 or a dozen people. They get kind of weird and they follow leaders. You got to be your own leader. I'm my own leader. And I'm going to leave you with one more thing. Here's a name. Everybody know the Collateral Murder video? Yes. Do you know the name of Ethan McCord? Who knows about Ethan McCord? I didn't until 2 days ago, and I'm appalled. Ethan McCord was a private, one of the first who showed up to care for the injured and the dead people on the ground that the gunship gunned down. He gave interviews. He tried to get his message out. He looked in that van and he found a 4-year-old girl with glass in her eyes. She could not close her eyes. He pulled the glass slivers out of her eyes so she could close her eyes. She was screaming from a nightmare. Her brother, 7 years old, they thought he was dead. He carried that little boy in his arms to the Bradley vehicle to take him to the hospital. The father was slumped over dead in that van. He was on the scene. This is new information, but the news media was already spinning it as to, oh, well, you know, war is difficult. These things happen. Ethan couldn't get his message out, but he's on YouTube. I think. YouTube's pretty bad. But search on Collateral Murder, Ethan McCord. It's very, very moving testimony, and everybody needs to know what it's really about. Thank you.
Well, I think about Julian Assange almost every day, maybe every day. And the message I wrote for Julian was, "Happy birthday, Julian. Thank you for your courage." And I think a lot about the courage that Julian had to stand up against the U.S. imperialist war machine. Took incredible courage, and he's paying for it now. And his paying for it calls all of us to find the courage within ourselves to do things above and beyond what we're used to doing, above and beyond what we're comfortable doing. And I would like to call, one other person I want to bring attention to. How many people know who Daniel Hale is? Daniel Hale is another man who has incredible courage, who's in prison right now for revealing U.S. drone war crimes. He's a backdoor draft veteran who was caught up joining the military because he had few options other than doing that, coming from a poor community, a poor family. And he was pushed into the drone program very early as just a young man in his early 20s. Saw horrible crimes committed against humanity by the U.S. drone program, and ultimately leaked important documents, and is serving 45 months in prison right now. So I see Daniel Hale and Julian Assange as equals, and I'm calling on people to join me in August when Congresswoman Pelosi is here on her break from Congress in our the San Francisco district. She lives in Pacific Heights. I need at least one person to commit to do an overnighter up to a week, if I can find, but even just for a few days, and other people just come out for part of the days to be at Pelosi's house and protest her silence around Daniel Hale and Julian Assange. And I'm also calling on people to do something above and beyond their comfort zone and actually stand on the porch of Nancy Pelosi's home and protest of these horrible crimes against free press, crimes against humanity, all kinds of crimes. But to say we want our democracy back and be willing to, in San Francisco it's pretty easy to do civil disobedience. They often just release you in a couple hours, so the risk is so low. But I'm ready to stand in support of Julian Assange and Daniel Hale. I hope some of you will too, and I'm going to try to organize something like that in August when Nancy Pelosi is in town. Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Happy birthday, Julian! We love you!